Hello, Nick James. How are you today?
Very well, Sally. Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure, Nick. You're always fascinating to talk to. And one of the things I always say to people is when it comes to the art of copywriting and sales language and things like that, you are the meister. So guys, those of you here watching, I am here with Nick James. He is the CEO of Expert Empires. Now, you may not know the name Nick James unless you particularly follow him, but you will know his company. He is the guy that actually brings people like Grant Cardone, Gary Vee, and all sorts of amazing people together to talk on his stages to educate entrepreneurs, business owners, people that want to grow their businesses from all over the UK, certainly. And I'm imagining probably a worldwide audience by now, Nick, as well. So it was just a real honor to have him here today. So thank you so much for joining us, Nick. I know you, of course, from years ago. We've bummed along many, many times in different paths, in different venues. I came to one of your Bums on Seats events. I think it was down in Bloomsbury or somewhere, central London, a few years ago. That was a cracking event. I can remember being there, and I've seen you speak. It was a long time ago. It's probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, something like that. So yeah, we've crossed paths many, many times. So thank you so much for joining us here today. And guys, the reason we wanted to interview Nick James because he's got a very interesting business story and certainly around pivoting as well. So I want to know what his secret has been as to how to really, really grow a business such as his and some of the success stories he's learned and some of the things that he's thought along the way that perhaps we could have done a little bit different. So Nick, over to you. Why do you do what you do? Why bring people from all over the world to come and speak on stages? Why coach other people? What drew you to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the why you do what you do is it's a big question, obviously, and I suppose the easiest way for me to answer is I've been very fortunate to be around the personal development, self-improvement world for many, many years. So I often share this story. I'll keep it brief. 12 years of age, my mum invited me to go to a Tony Robbins seminar in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I didn't really know anything about Tony Robbins or personal development or NLP or anything like that. But I thought 2 weeks in Hawaii, I mean, how bad could it possibly be? So I took a couple of weeks off school, bonus, and off we went. And like most people, I'm sure many people tuning in today or listening to this on the podcast can relate to that experience the first time they attended an event or read a book, or if you're really old, listen to a tape set or something like that, that really opened your mind, changed your thinking. And that couple of weeks in Hawaii at Tony Robbins Life Mastery in 1994 was really the catalyst for everything I do today. And as I said, I feel very, very fortunate to have been around who I believe to be still to this day the number one person on the planet when it comes to creating those events, those experiences. And of course, you know, all through my teens, my 20s, I was around either attending events or even working for a training company. Was my first kind of foray into this professionally. Did some speaking myself, traveled all over the world, all over the US, Australia, all over Europe, learning from, you know, the best in the business. And so what inspired me to create Expert Empires, having, you know, I've been in this world running my own business since 2008, but more recently in kind of 2016, 2017, I created Expert Empires, ran our first event of this kind in May 2017. And the reason was that I'd spent the previous probably 5, 6, 7 years traveling all over the world to learn from the best, but I didn't feel that there was an opportunity really to learn from the best here in the UK. So, you know, I always shout out Ryan Dice, good friend of mine, who created Traffic and Conversion Summit, amazing event. I go there every year. I go to San Diego for that event, and I love it. And it does frustrate me a little bit that there isn't anything anywhere near, in my opinion, of that quality in the UK. So really, hats off to Ryan. The inspiration for Expert Empires was his event in San Diego. I went, how can I create something that's as good as that here in the UK? And that's where Expert Empires was born.
Did you find any resistance from the English market in doing an event like that? Or did you feel that they were ready for it? They were hungry for it. They wanted it. What was your first impression when you first started it?
Yeah, I think it was also born not only out of inspiration from, you know, following Ryan and working with him and attending his event, but also it was also born a bit out of frustration with the UK events industry, and I felt that it had kind of gone in a certain direction that I didn't particularly love, which was, you know, a lot of events being run where it was like basically just a pure sales pitch. There was, you know, they were either free or very low cost. There wasn't really much substance, much value, much content being offered up. And I felt like there was an undercurrent, a feeling in our industry that people were kind of getting sick of it. And so the reason I created Expert Empires was because I feel like the market is getting frustrated and moving away from this old model. And I've seen this new way of doing it over here, but no one's doing that in the UK, which was why I created it. And so I don't think there was, the only resistance actually was the first time we ran Expert Empires, which was May 2017. The resistance was the ticket price. The minimum ticket price was 200 quid. It was actually 199 plus VAT, so just over 200 quid, up to £1,000 plus for a seat. And there was a lot of feeling of like, this is expensive. You know, my sales team was speaking to people on the phone. They're like, this is crazy. This is, I mean, people were saying this is a rip-off. This is so expensive. And the reason was they didn't really understand yet, because they were comparing Expert Empires to all these other events that are either free or very low cost. So, you know, that just took time to build the brand, you know, the community of people that had attended that really got it. And look, I'm willing to bet that any premium brand on the planet probably has the same problem when it first comes to market with a premium price product or service. Compared to everything else, it looks expensive, and then over the time people start to experience it and see the value, and then, you know, we very rarely, if ever, hear that objection, that problem anymore.
Yeah, because I suppose if you look at the older style events, they don't tell you that they're going to be pitching to you at every presentation, do they? So they just see the big names and think, oh, 97 quid, I'm going to see 14 huge name speakers. But there's you hitting the market and go, right, there's going to be, oh, I don't know, 7 or 8, you know, big name speakers, but they can't really see the difference. And you can say we're not going to pitch to you, but they probably didn't believe you anyway, I suppose.
So where I think we did particularly well was that, you know, you just said, oh, the old time, you know, people would turn up and they wouldn't know if they were going to, you know, that they were going to get pitched like crazy. I would argue that in the last few years, yes, they did. They started to become aware of that. And that's why getting people to come to these events was getting so much more challenging, so much more difficult. I know plenty of people in the industry that were suffering with lower registration numbers, lower show rates. It was costing a lot more in advertising to get someone to book a ticket in the first place. So all of that was going on, and I could just see a market, an industry on the decline. I was like, look, everyone I'm speaking to is telling me who run events and promote events, it's getting more expensive to advertise, it's getting more difficult to get people to book, and it's getting more difficult to get people to show up. And sales at the events are on the decline. So I was looking at all that and going, well, doesn't make any sense to try and play that game. Let's find a different way.
Yeah, this must have been really quite nerve-wracking for you thinking about it, because you were embarking on a whole new journey, almost like creating a new product, really, weren't you? It's totally different to what, I mean, okay, you've got industry conferences, which we're all used to, which usually bore the pants off you, you know, you sit there and just try not to fall asleep for the entire day. But you were doing the American style, you were doing the big speakers. It was costing you a lot of money. I can remember me and you actually another time we met. Do you remember we went to Gary Vee's book launch? And we were sitting there and you were trying to get him to speak. And I can remember us having a conversation about that. You know, it's a lot of money to get these people on the stage. So it was a big, I want to say risk. It was a big step for you, wasn't it, really? It would be a huge step to say, right, I'm going to spend 300-400 grand on speakers or whatever the figure was. And don't know if you can sell the tickets because you've got to book them in advance. I mean, you must have been a bit nervous.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I remember signing the contract, and I signed the contract and sent it off, and I went through to my wife and I went, I've just done something that's either the best, that's going to be like the turning point of our business and our life forever, in a really good way or in a really bad way. And I'm not quite sure. But the truth was, I mean, you know, I think I had been in the industry long enough that I had a sense, and you know, it wasn't the first event I'd run. I'd run events previously to that, using the old model, if you want to call it that. So you know, I knew about, you know, I mean, Sally, you mentioned you and I met many years ago at one of my events called the Bums on Seats Bootcamp, which was about how to put bums on seats, how to promote, how to fill, how to maximize profit from live events. So if I didn't know how to do it myself, would have been a bit of a problem. So I did have a plan, a strategy. I had, you know, a fair idea of how I was going to make it work. But even in that being true, there was still an element of risk, clearly. And everyone in the industry who I spoke to told me it was a bad idea, which sometimes tells you you're onto a winner, because it's against it's against the conventional wisdom. Everyone was like, hold on a minute, so you're going to charge a couple of £100 minimum a ticket where everyone else was like free or very cheap. You're not going to hammer sales at the event. How are you going to make this work? And I had a plan which included sponsorship packages. The tickets themselves would pay for a large chunk of the costs. We, you know, full disclosure, we do have some products and services available for purchase at our events, albeit I think, you know, you've been to our events and others that have as well, I'm sure would back me up and say it's definitely not delivered in the way, it's not like a big sales pitch from stage. It's a, hey, you know what, here's what we got, and if it's of any interest to you, here's where you can go get it. And you know, there'd only be, over a whole 2 days, there'd only be probably 4 speakers that have anything to sell that are on stage. So the rest of the majority are not selling a product or a service at all. So, and I think, you know, generally speaking, people, the audience, and I can say this as an audience member of many events as well, the audience are accepting of the fact that, you know, Expert Empires isn't a charity, it's a commercial venture. And so, you know, we can't afford to bring Gary Vaynerchuk and Grant Cardone and David Goggins and all these amazing speakers over to the UK and put on these great shows if we're losing money. We just can't afford to do that. So I think generally speaking, people are reasonable and understand the model and how it works.
Well, I think you've done phenomenally well. I remember when you put that first event on, I remember looking at it thinking, like, what's the strategy here? Because I was like, oh, it's different. It's different. I know it's different, but fair play to you. Well done on doing it, on breaking the mold, getting out there, taking that risk, signing that contract and doing it. Because I think you've actually changed the structure for events here in the UK for everybody. I think it probably hasn't rippled through yet. I think a few people still need to make those changes, but I actually think you're onto something. Do you think it's going to change? Do you think everyone's going to start adapting your model or a different type of model?
Well, the signs are that, yes, definitely the signs are, you know, we're a few years in here and there's more and more, there's many people that you and I both know, Sally, who are moving away from their old model of doing big multi-speaker pitch fest events and are now switching their model to either, of course, here in 2020, a lot of online events are happening instead. But it was becoming more and more common. There's definitely other events that are popping up that are following a similar approach, a similar strategy to what we do with Expert Empires. And, you know, that you might think, oh, well, that's competition, that's not good, right? And I'm like, well, actually, you know what? Like, I do believe that there's more than enough people in this country that love to come into events. I mean, you know, we get people flying in from all over Europe, all over the world to attend. So look, there's not a finite amount of potential ticket holders. So I'm good. If anything, I think that if Expert Empires even played a small part, and I even played a small part in raising the standard and improving the quality of events and the standards in our industry, then I'm happy with that.
Now, Expert Empires is just one part of your business, because I know you do this. Is it 2 or 3 times a year? I think, and obviously not in Corona world, but you know, it's normally, is it a couple of times a year, 3 times a year?
Yeah. So in 2019 we did 3 events. That's the most we've done in a single year. And then the plan for 2020 was to do 3 events, and we've done 0. Although actually we did have a fully booked event scheduled for the end of March. And so we ended up switching that to an online event instead. Which was challenging to say the least. We had well over 500 people that had paid to attend, And then at 48 hours notice, we had to postpone the event. So we moved it online, and I think we did a pretty good job. You know, I think the feedback was really, really positive and really strong. So you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, ordinarily we would be a few events like that a year. Funnily enough, you know, we've all learned a lot, I think, in the last 6-7 months, and going forward, I probably would move it to 2 events a year maximum. And as we were speaking about before we went live here, a lot more small workshops, which we've been doing. You know, we've been running events 3-4 times a week at the moment at our training center with 8, 10, 12, 15 people at a time, which we can do right now with social distancing and all the restrictions that are in place. So yeah, I think we all have to adapt. And like, as you said, Expert Empires is probably the thing that I'm best known for, but it is only one part of the business, really.
What would you say you've obviously grown up in a world of motivation and inspiration, which is unusual for most people, but I know you didn't immediately hit the ground as an inspirational speaker. You did hit normal world for a while, didn't you, and go and work in employed world. How did that feel going from, and one of the questions I'm leading to here is are we doing enough inspiration, motivation stuff with our kids? Because I know you have children, and I imagine you bring them up like you were brought up, I would imagine. But there's a lot of people that perhaps feel we could do more with education and more with inspiration and motivation of our children. So the question I'm getting to here is, you grew up in this really motivational environment with motivational parents, and you're in this, mindset environment. And then you came out of college and you went into the real world as an employee, I believe, if I remember your story correctly. How did that feel, coming from an entrepreneurial mindset, going to an employee? How is it to struggle to get back to that? Because nobody gives you a wad of cash and says, go and start your own business. We have to fight our way there, don't we? How did that feel, making that transition?
Yeah, I think first of all, even though I was very fortunate to have been around Tony Robbins and learned NLP and these amazing people, I still didn't have any clue how to run a business. So I think, and I did business studies at university, and I still didn't have any clue how to.
Doesn't surprise me.
Because, and again, I don't think I'm always very careful not to badmouth traditional education too much, because it was part of my growing up and part of my development. So I've got to give credit where it's due. Effectively, though, what that business studies degree, which I didn't complete, by the way, what it really was, it was preparing me to go and work in a big company. And so I took the logical step as part of that to work in a big company, and it was the third year of my 4-year degree to go on a placement, and I went and worked in a financial services institution, and don't get me wrong, I mean, it was full of lovely people, and I had some fun, but it was not what I wanted to do. And actually, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it actually caused me to realize this is not my path. And so what I then did was actually went and worked for a small entrepreneurial organization, for a training company in this field, for a guy who, of course, very well, called Andy Harrington. Andy gave me a job in sales, and I learned more. I always say this, I learned more in 3 weeks working in Andy's small, dynamic entrepreneurial company than I did in 3 years at university. And so actually that was, I think, the best training, the best education I could have got. And after, I think it was probably 18 months, 2 years working in Andy's company, then I actually went and started my own business, and had a relative amount of success quite quickly, because I'd learned up close and personal what it takes, which I just had no clue before. So I do think, going into employment often gets there's a lot of negative connotations around it, like that's a bad thing or a wrong thing, or you're giving up on your dream and any of that stuff. And I think actually, for me, as a young, whatever I would have been, 22, 23-year-old, it was the best training I could possibly have received, and I got paid to do it. I'm like, it doesn't get any better than that, really, when you stop and think about it. And hopefully Andy would say that I added some value to his business as well. We're still great friends to this day, and we do partnerships and stuff together. We've done quite a lot of business together over the years. He's spoken on my stage, I've spoken on his. So I think often getting a job is frowned upon and seen as a bad thing if you want to start your own business. I'd actually argue that you know, if anyone was watching or listening to this and they're young, excited about starting their own business and have got ideas and designs on doing their own thing, I think the best thing you could do to start with is actually go and work within a company that's already doing the thing that you want to do.
I don't know about you, but we're finding a lot of conversations from a lot of people right now wanting to start up in business. A lot of people, as we speak, post-corona, or not post-corona, we're still in the midst of corona, but a lot of people are getting redundancy paychecks, they've lost their jobs, and they are considering going into employment. So with your vast experience in doing what you do and making that leap from employed to self-employed, what would you advise them to do? Obviously, go and work in the industry, first of all. How do you mentally take that leap? What's the first things they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I said, I was fortunate to have been up close and personal with Andy's business and knew the game. I mean, my first business in 2008 that I set up straight out of that job was as a freelance copywriter. So as part of my development in Andy's company, I'd learned a bit about sales initially and then speaking, but also marketing. So I'd written some email campaigns, I've created some website content and stuff for Andy. That had been quite successful, and I had like a natural talent for it. So it made perfect sense. And I think the mistake a lot of people make, to answer your question, is they go out and try and replicate the exact thing that, like, I could have tried to be Andy Harrington and probably would have failed dismally because Andy had been doing it a lot longer than me, had more money behind him than I did. So I'm like, I've got to find a way to start a business. And so I went very niched, if you like. I was like, right, I am going to write copy for this industry called NLPers and coaches. And so managed to get some good results quite quickly because I was so niched, so specialized. And then, of course, grew the business. And before long, it turned from just me providing a service called I'll write your copy for you, your marketing messages, your email campaigns, your sales letters, etc., to I'll now teach people how to do that. And then as we grew, it was like, well, now I'll teach other marketing tactics that I'd used successfully with clients. But I think starting off as a real niche specialist, not trying to run before you can walk, would probably be the first bit of advice. And the other skill set that I was very fortunate to have, and I think this is the most important skill set when you're starting from scratch, is the ability to sell. I'd worked with Andy for 18 months, 2 years, selling on the phone, selling face-to-face, selling from the stage. I knew exactly how to do those things. Not saying I was world class at it, but I was experienced at least. So, the ability to be able to sell and close is, I think a lot of people, you just said, they come out of employment, they got a redundancy check, especially right now. The skill that most are lacking is that they've never sold anything. And
nice words, actually, because looking at what you did there, you could have said try to replicate the business you were working within, but that would have been really expensive as well to do that and to build up that momentum. Yeah,
it'd been really risky because, whereas approaching a few people that I already knew and getting introductions via those people to other people that they knew, and to say, hey, here's what I've got, here's what I can do for you, and making them a really great offer to try me out and see if I'm any good. That was really all I did to get started.
But it's also a very low cost business you set up there, really, because you and a phone, selling yourself, selling your services, you can prove yourself by doing what you're doing, and then you can improve the ticket sale item. I think that was really good strategy, actually, and I think a lot of people should take note of that, because I know a lot of guys I've met, they go and they get expensive shops and they have to have the branding, and they're like 180 grand's gone and they haven't done a single sale. It's crazy.
Well, here's the point. I often say my biggest advantage was I didn't have any money. I didn't have 180 grand to waste. Yeah. So literally, I'm in a position where I've left this job. I got a small amount of cash to pay the bills for maybe a month or so. I'm like, I got to go and get clients and get paid now. There is no fallback plan. There is no war chest. There is no pot of cash to invest in offices and branding and fancy website and staff and all that. I got to just work this out pretty damn quick, which I do think was my biggest advantage. And of course, as I've grown the business and, I've been able to take more expense on staff, offices. We were talking before about we built a training centre which seats, you know, in normal times up to 100 people. You know, I can invest in speaker fees and running big events, but to do that at the start would have been very foolish and naive and very risky.
And as you say, you can have the best bagels in town, but if you can't market yourself and tell people about it, you're not going to sell any, are you? So marketing and sales, very, very wise words. Fantastic. Now, one of the things that I'm going to come back to is, do you think that perhaps we should do more around mindset? I mean, do you think people should bring their children to your event? When I say children, I mean teenagers of influential age. Is it something we should be doing more as business owners, as a community, start to help educate our younger people, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, I was very fortunate to be around this world, if that's what you want to call it, from a very early age. I think trying to force it is actually potentially going to be counterproductive. I think when I look back, and bearing in mind we're 25 years ago here, so I can't remember it vividly, but you know, I was never force-fed this stuff by my mum. I was invited to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, which is pretty irresistible, I must say. And therefore I had the opportunity to see this for myself. And you know, my mum wouldn't mind me sharing, you know, she'd absolutely changed her life over the previous maybe 12, 18 months, like for the better in every area you can possibly imagine. So all of a sudden I'm looking at this amazing woman going like, she's my mum, I love her dearly, and she's absolutely changed her life. Whatever she's been doing works. And now I get to go to Hawaii. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. And I think making it appealing and demonstrating the power through your own behavior, whether we're talking about your kids or whether we're talking about other people important in your life, your friends, your family, your parents, your aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, whatever. I think, you know, you being the example often attracts people to ask more questions. And I've always encouraged but not forced my kids to learn alternative stuff outside of mainstream education. So, you know, I took my oldest, Zach, he's 11 now, but one of my clients actually a few years back was running personal development events for kids. So I was like, hey, do you want to go? He was up for it. We went along. He loved it. You know, a mutual friend of ours, Rob Moore, was doing some stuff through lockdown actually on his Facebook supporter program, which I'm a member of. And it was like, you know, we're doing 3 times a week special stuff for kids on mindset and money and entrepreneurship and health and all this. And so Zach went through all that as well. So look, I think yes, you know, creating the opportunities for our kids to get exposure to an alternative education, I think is a good thing. But actually, I suppose my final piece on this would be the people that probably influence your kids' education most are you as parents. And so actually, like, you can send them on as many seminars as you want, but the fact is they're in your house 24/7, 365. And so how you parent, how you show up is probably, I believe, more impactful than any seminar you could send them on or any book you could encourage them to read. So yeah, I think, yes, of course, look at what education opportunities are out there. And we do have, you know, we have quite a few teenagers and youngsters that come to our events, and I love to see that. I mean, we've had some really young kids come to our events. My kids generally come, and you know, people will probably give me some flack for this, but I take them out of school because I go, look, it's a couple of days for them to, first of all, be part of it, you know, see what I do and what I've built and what I've created, and meet some amazing people and be around the energy of it all and see these great speakers and meet them. And, you know, it's cool for them. I think, you know, a couple of days out of school is probably not too much a price to pay. And, you know, it seems to be paying off. They seem to be doing pretty well.
That's really good. Well done. I remember in when I was younger, when my son was about 8, 9, 10, I can remember taking him to B&I in the days of B&I years ago. Does it still exist, B&I? I don't know, probably doesn't.
Yeah.
And used to take him to B&I, and he, by the time of 12, he was actually trading mobile phones. He'd put his little puppy eyes on and goes, anybody got any old phones? And then he'd sell them. He had a cracking little business going. So I'm all for it. But I just wonder what your thoughts were, because you've grown up in that environment. So you can talk from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So come on, what's your...
Let me also tell you this. just because I've grown up in this environment does not mean that I've been perfect and you know, never fallen foul of making bad decisions or bad life choices or being a negative mindset or any of that stuff. Like, I have had my ups and downs as much as anyone. I think really all it's meant is that I've been better equipped to deal with the ups and downs. That, you know, when I've been at absolute rock bottom and had some of my worst experiences in business and in life, because of the grounding that I've had, I've been able to pick myself up, turn it around more quickly, maybe, than I would have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, I think probably I imagine your parents went through ups and downs as well, because they're in a, you know, just businessy environment as well. So seeing your parents go through the highs and also the lows, you understand it's a thing, and it's not your fault that it's a down point, or business is hard, or Corona's hit, or an event didn't work, or whatever it is that went wrong. It's just life, isn't it? These things happen. A lot of people think in business it's rosy and it's tinted spectacles and everything's wonderful, but there's lows as well as highs, both ways. So absolutely, yeah. Wise words. So I'm just asking you now, what's your big secret to success, Nick? You know, what can you say to people that are in business, they want to succeed? What would you say your biggest thing you've learned, the biggest secret to success is?
Yeah, I mean, that's another big question. I mean, we could be here for hours just on this one thing. I think for me, let me answer it a slightly different way, which is, if I was talking to me in 2008, 2009, when I just started in business, the advice I'd give myself would have been think bigger, like play a bigger game. I was definitely back then quite limited in my thinking of what I could achieve. And my favourite Tony Robbins quote, I've actually got it on the wall in our training centre, is that most people dramatically overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. And when I look back now, when I started 2008, 2009, if you'd have told me I'd have built a business of this size within 10, 12 years, I would have thought no chance. Like, it was way bigger, but the business I built was way bigger than I ever imagined. But back then I was naive, thinking that I was going to move a lot more quickly than I actually did. So I think look at thinking really big, long term, because you'd be amazed what you can build and what you can achieve over 5, 10 years. But also be realistic about what you can achieve in the next 3, 6, 12 months. I think often we get those two things the wrong way around.
Very wise words, very wise words. What would you say, what are you working on at the moment, Nick? What's your big projects? What's your thing that you're entertaining yourself with currently?
Yeah, so I mean, right now we were just talking before we went live here. I mean, obviously, Expert Empires events are missing dearly, but they're not on the menu right now. We can't put 500, 600, 700 people in a room safely due to the guidelines and due to COVID. So what I'm doing instead is finding ways to put 500, 600, 700 people in rooms spread out over a period of months. So we're doing 3 or 4 events a week right now with 8, 10, 12, 15. I think our maximum capacity right now is 25 people, theatre style or classroom style, in our training centre with social distancing. So like we're just putting on more events, and you know, it's more work, but it means that we're still reaching the amount of people we want to reach, making a difference to those people, building our business. I mean, we've actually had, by the looks of it, by the end of this year, I'm expecting our overall group revenue will be slightly down on last year, but profit will be up significantly, because you know we've still maintained our focus and our vision on what we're here for, which is to you know, inspire and educate experts and business owners and help them to make a difference in the world. We're still on that mission regardless. We're just finding a different way to fulfill it. And actually, by running a larger number of smaller events, actually costs a lot less in terms of financial resource than it does to run a lot fewer big events. So, you know, there are certainly benefits to the adjustment in model that we've taken, and you know, I still miss the big events, and I can't wait to get them back.
Yeah, this weekend just gone, we would have been running our Agent Rainmaker Live. We were just saying this morning, we miss it.
Yeah.
It's horrible. But
you know what? I think you just got to find other ways. Like what you think. Well, what was it about that event that excited you, and what was it about that event that made a big difference in the world? And then ask, how can you do that in other ways? And we've done 3 of our biggest, 4, I think, of our biggest ever online events over the last few months. And like I said, we're getting a lot of people come to our small workshop style events, and actually, in a way, they're even better because I get to meet and connect with every single person individually, whereas I can never do that with 500, 600, 700 people there. So there are advantages to this alternative model as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Online at the moment as well. There's so many things emerging, isn't there? Webinars and summits, and there's so much stuff you can join now and look at it. But it's great you're doing the physical stuff as well. I think that's really good. So how can people reach out to you, Nick? What could they do if they want to contact you, reach out with you, interest in one of your events or anything like that? What's the best place to catch you?
Yeah, probably best place is to join our Facebook group. It's free. It's called the Expert Empires Community. So just search on Facebook for Expert Empires Community. Free to join, and there you'll get loads of free content from me, videos, Q&As. All our podcast episodes get published in there as well, and we keep you up to date of any upcoming events, workshops, opportunities that we're running.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nick. Nick, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And good luck with all your events. Sounds really exciting.
You too. Great to see you again. Thanks a lot for having me.
Bye-bye.